Welcome back to the Shigeaki podcast, where we age strong with small, steady habits. I'm Dr. Mark Hyman. Tonight we're talking about sleep after 60 and how easy it is to slide from just a few nights of help into something you never planned. Let me tell you about Ellen, 68, live in Ohio, after her husband passed, nights stretched out. Not frightening, just loud and long. A friend offered a mild sleeping pill. It worked. She finally drifted off. Months later, she noticed foggy mornings, a bit of wobble when she stood, and one near fall reaching for a cereal bowl. "I'm not trying to do anything risky," she told me. "I just don't want to stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. This isn't weakness. It's human. A pill can feel like a switch off, goes the fear of another empty night. But sometimes a switch becomes a habit, and a habit becomes a loop. We're here to help you step out safely, kindly, without leaving you stranded in the dark. Before we go on, meet my mentor and co-host, Japan's beloved centenarian neurologist, Dr. Shigeaki Hinohara. Doctor, when someone Ellen's age says, "I can't sleep," what do you listen for first?
I listen for rhythm. In Japan, sleep begins long before the pillow, not rules ritual, a short sequence that cools the day, warms the hands, and softens the light. When elders restore that rhythm, the night often remembers how to welcome them. I won't list the steps yet. We will walk them together soon. Mark, may I ask, what did you notice most in Ellen's story?
Two things. First, fear, not of the dark, but of tomorrow's fatigue. Second, a quiet belief that sleep only arrives if a tablet is nearby. That belief has gravity. Tonight, we're going to test it gently, no lectures, no shaming, by showing how the body still recognizes signals it trusts.
Yes, after 60, the brain responds less to force, more to familiar cues. A morning cue that says day has begun. An evening cue that says the climb is over. When those cues repeat, sleep appears less like a battle and more like a return. We will not jump ahead, only promise that the path is simple enough to try this week.
Let me set expectations without giving the plan away. In a moment, we'll explain why sleep gets harder after 60 and why it's not just aging. We'll look at the daytime factors that quietly shape your night, the sleeping pill loop that even careful people slip into, and a safer way forward if you're already using medication. We'll also show you how to talk with your doctor calmly, clearly, so any change is steady and safe.
We will give you 2 evening rituals and 1 morning practice to choose from. Nothing exotic, nothing expensive. Think of them as bells: morning, midday, evening. When the bells find a rhythm, the body listens, but not yet. We will leave the details for the next parts.
Ellen and I started with one tiny question. What would bedtime look like if the goal wasn't knockout, but simply grow drowsy? That shift away from force towards signal changed how she approached the night. I won't preview what we picked. I want you to hear the why first, because that's what keeps a new habit alive.
And for anyone worried, no, we will not tell you to throw anything away tonight. We respect medicines used wisely. We also respect the risks of morning fog and falls. Our aim is not a stunt. It is a sequence you can repeat without fear.
So here's the map, not the turn by turn. Why sleep changes after 60, the part nobody explains. Well, what tightens insomnia during the day without you noticing, how the pill trap forms and how to keep from sinking deeper. The gentle exit ramps you can discuss with your clinician. And finally, a short menu of evening and morning cues to practice for 7 days.
Bring a small notepad. Write 1 promise to yourself. I will learn the rhythm first. I will choose the steps second. The night appreciates patience.
All right, let's begin with the foundation. Why insomnia after 60 is rarely just old age and the silent daytime choices that make or break your night. Stay with us. The details are coming, one calm step at a time. Let's pull back the curtain on why nights change after 60 without blaming age or willpower. Think of sleep as an orchestra run by 2 conductors. Your body clock sets when you get sleepy and wake. Sleep pressure sets how deeply you sleep. After 60, both conductors get a little quieter. The clock often drifts earlier, you feel drowsy sooner, and you pop awake earlier. And if your daytime has less light, less movement, and more indoor time, the clock never gets a strong daytime signal. Meanwhile, sleep pressure weakens fewer steps. fewer muscle signals, less natural daylight, so the body doesn't collect enough need for deep sleep. It's not stubbornness, it's biology.
In Japan, we describe it like this. Your internal sun becomes shy. It rises softly and sets too soon. The remedy is not force. It is clear signals, especially in the morning. Light on the eyes, gentle movement in the legs, a simple meal to say, day has begun. When elders lose these signals, the night loses confidence.
There are also daytime and evening amplifiers that quietly make sleep worse, pain that spikes in the evening, or stiffness that builds when you stop moving. Frequent urination at night. Late heavy meals, especially if they're spicy, very salty or high in sugar. Caffeine after mid-afternoon. Alcohol at night. It can make you drowsy, then fragment sleep and wake you at 2 to 3 a.m. Blue light from phones and tablets, strong signal to the brain that it's still daytime. None of these mean you're doing something wrong. They're levers we can adjust.
There's another layer. People overlook medical conditions and medicines that nudge sleep off track. A short home screen can help you decide what to bring up with your clinician. Loud snoring, gasping, or pauses in breathing, morning headaches, or dry mouth. Consider sleep apnea, very common and very treatable. An urge to move your legs at night that eases when you get up and walk. Think restless legs. Mood changes, low mood, loss of interest, or persistent anxiety. Treating mood can treat sleep. Multiple medicines, some decongestants, steroids, certain antidepressants, stimulants, and even late diuretics push against sleep. Bring an updated list to your doctor or pharmacist and ask which of these could be keeping me up and can we adjust timing or dose.
Next, we'll talk about the sleeping pill trap, why even careful people slide into it, what risks grow with age, and how to think about safer steps if you're already on medication. No judgment, just a clear map and steady hands. Stay with us. Let's talk about the loop. Ellen drifted into how a pill can quiet the night now, but quietly tax tomorrow. Most sleeping pills don't create natural deep sleep. They create sedation. On a sleep study, you often see less slow-wave sleep and fragmented REM. You feel knocked out, but you don't wake truly restored. And here's the catch: after 60, the brain and balance centers become more sensitive to that sedation. The next day, morning fog, slower reflexes, and a higher chance of stumbles.
In clinic, I see 3 patterns again and again. First, dose creep. What worked in week 1 feels weaker in week 6, so people inch the dose up or add just half of something else. Second, daytime heaviness, groggy walking softer. Memory, small decisions becoming difficult. Third, rebound nights stop suddenly and the next few nights feel worse than before, so fear grows and the pill returns. None of this means failure. It means the body has adapted.
A quick, plain English map of the common meds, so you know the terrain, not to self-manage, but to have a better talk with your doctor. Benzodiazepines, strong sedation. In older adults, they're tied to confusion, falls, and dependence. The so-called Z drugs, different chemistry, similar story, can help you fall asleep, but carry next-day impairment, balance problems, and rare parasomnias. Sleepwalking, sleep eating. Sedating antihistamines easy to buy, but anticholinergic dry mouth constipation, confusion, urinary retention, and worse fog in the morning. Other sedatives sometimes used off-label, some antipsychotics, or heavy sedating antidepressants. These come with their own risk profiles and are usually not first line for simple insomnia in older adults.
2 quiet dangers grow when pills meet alcohol or opioid pain medicines. The sedative effects stack. Breathing can slow, balance drops further. Another hidden corner is the medicine cabinet itself. Cold pills with decongestants, late-day steroids. Certain stimulants, even a late diuretic, can push sleep away. Older bodies handle combinations differently. A small mix can be big at 2 a.m.
Here's the message I give my patients. These medicines can be helpful for the right person, right dose, right window of time, especially in crisis or grief. but they're not designed to fix the underlying rhythm problems that drive insomnia after 60. If you rely on them, nightly risk drifts, upward falls, thinking changes tolerance, and that rebound if you try to stop abruptly.
So what do we do if someone is already taking them? 3 rules, gentle but firm. First, do not stop suddenly. The body has learned this lullaby. We change it slowly. Second, do not add or mix, especially with alcohol or other sedatives, to chase a rough night. And do not go alone. Bring your prescriber into the plan. Ask for a step-down schedule.
A doctor-guided taper often looks like small reductions every 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes switching to a form that's easier to measure. While the dose steps down, we step up the body's true sleep signals: morning, light, daytime, movement earlier, simple dinners, and the behavioral tools that actually retrain sleep. We'll walk those tools right after this section.
So the trap is clear: sedation feels like sleep, but doesn't fix the reason sleep went missing, and it raises risks. We care about thinking, balance, independence. The way out isn't bravery. It's a sequence you and your doctor can follow: slow taper where appropriate, plus tools that rebuild rhythm and deepen natural sleep.
Next, we will walk that sequence safer, non-drug, first step by step. Bring your note card. Choose 2 evening rituals and 1 morning light practice. We will place them like stones across the stream so you can cross without fear. Let's map the path we start with. In my clinic, no pills first. Real tools that retrain sleep. At the top sits CBTI, Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Insomnia. Don't let the name scare you. It's a short, practical program that changes 2 things. 1, what you do with your night's habits and timing, and 2, what you believe about your nights, so fear stops running the show.
In Japan, we call it teaching the body the lullaby again. Small steps repeated. Mark, let us give our listeners a simple version they can begin this week.
Absolutely. Think of CBTI as 4 gentle levers. 1, stimulus control. Go to bed only when truly sleepy. If you're awake 20 to 30 minutes, get up. Low light. Quiet activity. Paper book, simple puzzle. Breath work. Return only when sleepy again. No lounging in bed to try harder. We're teaching your brain this place is for sleeping. 2, sleep compression. Pick a fixed wake time you can keep every day, even weekends. Anchor the clock there. For 1 to 2 weeks, set time in bed closer to the actual time you sleep, then expand by 15 minutes every few nights as sleep becomes more solid. Translation: shorter, more efficient nights first, longer, deeper nights later. 3, cognitive calm, taming the what-ifs. Schedule worry time in the late afternoon. 10 minutes pen and paper, list what's on your mind. Plus, 1 next step. When worries show up at 2 a.m., tell them we have a meeting tomorrow. Swap catastrophe lines. If I don't sleep, I'll be ruined for truthful lines. My body can function on a rough night. I'm retraining a skill. 4, relaxation training. Try 4-6, breathing. Inhale, 4, exhale, 6. For 2 to 5 minutes in low light.
And we add rhythm outside the bedroom morning light. Let real daylight touch your eyes within an hour of waking. 10-15 minutes outdoors, if you can. Even on cloudy days, it is strong medicine for your clock. Movement: sprinkle light walks or chores through the day. A few strength motions: chair, stands, wall, push-ups. Tell the body to build sleep pressure. Naps, if you must, keep it 10-20 minutes before 2 p.m. Small, not deep.
Evening choices quietly decide your night. Dinner earlier and gentler aim, 2 or 3 hours before bed. Include protein. Avoid very salty, spicy, or sugary meals that trigger wake-ups or bathroom trips. Alcohol can make you drowsy, then fracture sleep. If you choose to drink, keep it with dinner, not later, and create alcohol-free nights during the week. Caffeine wraps by early afternoon, coffee, strong tea, sodas, dark chocolate. Screens dim 60-90 minutes before bed. Switch to amber lamps. Room cool and dark, roughly 65-70 degrees, 19 degrees 21 degrees, quiet, or with a soft fan white noise.
Let me offer a short evening ritual, simple and kind. 1, warm bath or shower, 10-15 minutes, then let the body cool. This invites sleep. 2, amber light, only 1 lamp, not the ceiling. 3, a small warm cup, barley tea, or chamomile, unsweetened, unsalted. 4, 3 back releases by the bed, knee to chest, each side, gentle side-to-side sway, then 4, 6 breathing for 1 minute. We are lowering the hill so you can roll into sleep instead of pushing.
What about supplements? Keep it simple and safe. I prefer food, first magnesium from pumpkin seeds, sesame soy, edamame, leafy greens, beans. If you're considering melatonin, think a low dose and write clock time and review with your clinician. Melatonin is a signal, not a knockout. More isn't better.
Listeners sometimes ask, what if I follow this and still have uneven nights? We expect some wobbles early. The brain is learning again. Measure success by fewer long wake-ups, earlier, sleepiness, and clearer mornings, not by perfection on night 1.
Let's put this into a 1-week starter, daily anchor, fixed wake time. Morning light, 10-15 minutes. Daytime short walks or chores. Brief strength snacks, no naps after 2 p.m. Evening dinner, 2 to 3 hours before bed. Amber lamps, screens off 60-90 minutes before. Warm bath, shower, 4-6 breathing. Bed only when sleepy. If awake 20 to 30, meaning get up low, light calm task, return when sleepy. Log 3 lines each day. Adjust sleep window weekly, expand by 15 minutes once sleep is 85-90% efficient.
And be kind to yourself. This is not a test. It is practice. If you miss a step, begin again at the next bell morning, midday evening. Rhythm forgives.
If you're already using a sleeping pill, do not stop tonight. Build these signals first. In the next part, we'll show how to discuss a gentle doctor-guided taper and place these tools like stepping stones so you can cross without fear. If tonight had one message, it's this. You don't have to knock yourself out to sleep. Your body can learn the lullaby again. After 60, the nervous system listens to signals, not force morning light, small daytime movement, an earlier gentle dinner, and a predictable wind-down. Pills can quiet a night, but rhythm keeps you safe tomorrow, clearer, thinking steadier steps, fewer near falls.
Yes, in our tradition we say, little bells, many days. Choose 1 morning bell sunlight on the eyes, a short walk, and 2 evening bells, warm bath or shower amber lamp, a small warm cup, 3 back releases. Practice them for 7 days, not perfectly, just faithfully. A body that feels cared for stops bracing against the night.
If you're using a sleeping pill now, please don't go it alone. Do not stop abruptly. Build the signals first. Then speak with your clinician about a slow step-down plan. Small dose changes every few weeks, supported by CBTI habits. Tell them what you've started. Fixed wake time, stimulus control, sleep compression, screen curfew, earlier dinner. That's how we turn a pill-based promise into a pattern your brain can trust.
And notice small wins, fewer. Long wake-ups, drowsiness arriving earlier. Softer mornings, steadier feet. These are victories. If worries return at 2 a.m., whisper, "We have a meeting tomorrow." Sit up low, light breathe 4-6, and return when the eyes grow heavy. Rhythm forgives.
If this helped, like and subscribe for weekly guidance on aging strong, and share this with someone who's tired of wrestling with the night. In the comments, tell us the one ritual you'll keep this week. May your evenings be gentle, your mornings bright, and your steps steady. We'll see you next time.